you're at 109 right now.
A story comes to mind and I want to share it with you. The question is, did she know me? Did she know my story? What was that all about? All right. So I was in Washington, D.C. last year. Yes, it was last year. I had returned from Ghana. I traveled to Ghana last year with my sister and our mutual friend. So my sister's family and our mutual friend from school's family. It was actually supposed to be my sister and our mutual friend's family's trip, but my dad got wind that they were planning a trip to Ghana, and my dad suggested, "Hey, you should go too." I didn't have plans to do that, but I ended up going. Excuse me. Well, anyway, it was last year that I flew to Ghana. I flew to Ghana via Washington, D.C. So from Los Angeles, I flew to Washington, D.C., and then I caught a flight from D.C. to Ethiopia. And then from Ethiopia, there was a short layover before flying directly to Accra, Ghana. A lot of flights, I know. I flew from LA to DC because I loved DC. I wanted to spend some time there, sightsee, I wanted to break up the monotony of flying. I didn't want to just fly, directly from LA. Well, I don't know if you can fly directly from LA to Ghana. I don't think so. But you can certainly fly directly from, maybe it's New York or maybe it's DC. But I think you can fly from New York directly to Accra, Ghana. So either way, I would have had to fly from LA. I would have had to break those flights up, either in DC or in New York. But anywho, I chose DC. Wanted to spend some time in DC before continuing on my journey to Africa. And I welcomed a layover in Ethiopia. I would have welcomed a longer layover in Ethiopia so that I could leave the airport and have a meal and just enjoy Ethiopia. But it wasn't to be. So anyway, I flew back to Ghana last year. And I then met up with my sister and our mutual friend, our former classmates, or schoolmates rather, their family. So 2 families together and plus me. All right. Now, before I got to Ghana, I was in Washington, D.C. Oh, no, you know what? I think it was when I was coming back, when I returned from Ghana. Truth be told, I don't remember exactly when this happened. But here's the point. I was in Washington, D.C. This was last year. And I know I had a copy of my book, 109 or 109. I had it in a little backpack that I was walking around the city with. I was walking around Washington, D.C. with a copy of 109. I remember I stepped out of the hotel where I was staying in Washington, D.C. Again, I don't know what day it was, whether I was leaving America to go to Africa or if I had returned from Africa. That detail is inconsequential, so I'll just carry on. So I'm in DC. I left the hotel. I'm carrying my book inside of my bag along with a few other gadgets. My GoPro, I believe, and cell phone and whatever else I need, right? And I happen to walk down the street and I noticed there's a car driving. Perhaps the car was driving in the opposite direction. So I had a clear view I was walking on the sidewalk, and from the sidewalk, I had a clear view of the car as it passed. I had a clear view of the car's license plate, and I could clearly see that the car had 109 on the license plate. All right. I think I need to tell you a little bit more about Washington, D.C., before I proceed. Washington, D.C. is home to the largest population of Ethiopians outside of Ethiopia. When I was there, every time I go to Ethiopia these days, I make sure to stop and have a nice Ethiopian meal, or have a beer or something when I go to an Ethiopian restaurant. And on this occasion, that was pretty much the same. Whenever I was there, I had gone to Little Ethiopia. So I wonder, that question that I asked earlier, I wonder if she remembered me from walking into some restaurant at Little Ethiopia. I don't know. But did she know my story? Like, I don't understand what the heck happened. Okay. Let me continue and explain what I mean by that. So as I'm walking down the street, this woman is driving, and she's coming in the opposite direction of me. But I could see the license plate, and I can see her license plate has the number 109 in it somewhere. 109 blah blah blah, or blah 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 109. Now, she's driving toward me. She's on the street, I'm on the sidewalk. I see her license plate, and rather than whip out my camera to snap a photo, I acknowledge that, her license plate says 109 on it, but I just let it go. I let it pass. I'm like, it's everywhere. I'm not going to stress it, right? So what? I didn't get a picture of it as proof. Like, hey, there I was, and there it was, and whatever. So I just let it go. And she passed, but I still thought to myself, dang, that would have been a cool opportunity to have photographed a license plate in Washington, D.C. with, 109 on the license plate. Again, I just let it go, and I kept walking down the street. I got down the street, and I got to an intersection, and I had to walk across the intersection to, of course, get to the other side. Why did Larry cross the road? To get to the other side. All right, and so now as I'm walking across the road, now it's a pretty large, it's about 6 lanes, right? 2 different directions, traffic going in 2 different directions, 3 lanes going one way, 3 lanes going back. It felt that way. These are pretty large lanes, right? Kind of the entrance to a highway, or never mind. Anyhow, as I'm walking across the street, I look down the street and I see a car speeding. It was kind of speeding toward the intersection. So I'm already like, oh, I have to be careful. That person may not see me as I'm crossing the street, and they could hit me. But not to worry. I had nothing to worry about, because as the driver approached the intersection, she slowed down and everything was under control. And I proceeded to walk across the street. And as I looked, I noticed her license plate, and I remembered, it was just a minute ago that I had seen her license plate. And I thought, hey, there's that car again. And it was a woman who was driving. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but I was like, hey, there's that woman again. There's that car. And I said to myself, hey, if I wasn't prepared to take the photo then, I should be prepared to take the photo now. But hey, I wasn't prepared to take the photo. I simply was not. What I did is I proceeded to walk across the street. I saw her license plate. I noticed that her car was the same car I had seen a minute before. And as I was passing, I pointed to her, and I waved to her, and I said, hey, and then I pointed at her license plate. Now, I got her attention. She looked at me, and she had a puzzled look on her face, like, what? Now, this woman was Ethiopian. And I thought, are the Ethiopians talking about my story? Are they saying, hey, there's this guy here, and he's got this story about, the story is about East Africa, specifically Ethiopia and Eritrea, and he's talking about these numbers 109. He's saying that these are special numbers, and Did word get back to her and then she happened to, was she stalking me? Was she waiting outside the hotel for me to exit? And she said, "Oh, there he is," as I was driving down the street. And then she said, "Oh, he's walking. I can catch up to him." So she went down the street, turned around, made a quick U, and drove back to catch me. She was speeding to get to that intersection, and our paths crossed a second time. Was that all planned? Did she, was she doing all of that? Was that of all her making, Well, I crossed the street. I pointed at her. I pointed at her license plate. I kind of gave her the thumbs up, and she had a puzzled look on her face, like, what? And as I crossed the street, I imagine she was already planning on doing this, but she made a right turn. Forget about how the streets are set up. I mean, this is what happened. I mean, this wasn't a city block, so there weren't any buildings obstructing her from making these kind of turns that she was making. Don't picture New York City or downtown Los Angeles. No, this is where was this? Crystal City. This is Crystal City, Washington, D.C. If you know that area, you know where that McDonald's is, where that 7-Eleven is. There's like a Hilton, few hotels around there, and then there's a highway, and then there are a few streets. All right. So look at a map, and then you can figure it out. But anyhow, there was that major intersection where she was she returned back. She turned right, and then as she turned right, she made another right. So it was sort of like a reverse U-turn, because usually you make a U-turn and you're turning to the left. Well, she made a U-turn turning to the right, turned into a little side street or whatever, okay? So as she's turning, I didn't grab my phone. I didn't grab my GoPro to photograph her license plate and do all of this stuff, but because I pointed at her license plate, I wanted her to know why I was pointing at her license plate. So I pulled out my book and I showed her 109. And after she turned the corner or turned around, she rolled the window down, and I pointed to my book and I said, "Your license plate matches my book's title. I wrote a book about those numbers." I want to believe that she understood what I said, and she looked at me and she said, "Okay," gave me the thumbs up, and she said to me, "You made my day." All right, so I don't know how I made her day. Like, was she looking for me? Did we have a connection in that moment where she was like, "Oh, thank you for noticing my license plate. When I heard about your story, I had to find you. I had to chase you down and show you my license plate. And now that you saw my license plate and then you've made my day," sort of thing. I've got no idea. I have no idea what the heck happened in that moment, but I saw that woman drive one way down the road. When I got to the intersection across the street, she had turned around and she was rearing down the street, speeding down that street to get to that intersection. And then we saw each other again, and I pointed to the license plate, pointed to her. I said, "Thumbs up," and she was like, "What? Thumbs up? What are you talking about?" She hit a quick turn, and we crossed paths again, and I was like, "Yo, your license plate, it matches my book, 109. Your license plate, 109. And she said, "You made my day." And then she drove off, and I kept walking to my destination. I don't know. I don't know how that happened. I don't know why that woman turned around, why she drove back to that intersection, why she was speeding. I don't know. I don't know why I made her day. I really don't know. I don't know. But I was not in Ethiopia. I was in Washington, D.C. This woman was Ethiopian, and her license plate had the numbers 109 in it. And the thing about it is 109 is the story about me discovering, or me arriving at a conclusion about these numbers and what they mean, given my travels around the globe, and given the fact that I had seen these numbers under peculiar circumstances in many different countries. And it led me to conclude that like something spiritual was happening. Like these numbers weren't just some random occurrences where I would see these numbers, but rather, God's hand, or the the universal spirit guiding me. So keep listening to my podcast. I've got stories about these 10-9 moments. This is a moment I don't think I talked about in the past, and I just had to talk about it in order to document it. So there it was, Washington, D.C. and 10-9. And for whatever reason, that Ethiopian woman had 10-9 on the license plate, and I made her day. All right. And what's very cool about this is that the last episode of this podcast, where I was talking to Joe, our conversation was about Ethiopia, and it was mostly about Ethiopia. And I didn't really get into 10-9, but maybe I have a story. Maybe I can share this story with Joe the next time we record a podcast. All right. I'm the IC 10-9 podcast host, Larry Wiggs, and I'm signing off. Peace and blessings.
You're at 109 right now.